Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, which is Protecting Your Business While Supporting a Remote Workforce, presented by Cowan Insurance. My name is Allison Mitchell, and I'm part of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce team. Before we start our webinar, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to share. Your microphones should be muted, but if you could please double check that to reduce background noise, we would appreciate it. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar, and you can do so by typing your questions into the questions box into the control panel. And after the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email with a link to today's presentation, as well as the slides. Our presenters today are Nick Goodfellow and Colin Bowman from Cowan Insurance. Nick is a sales consultant with the Small Business Solutions Group, and Colin is a consultant with National Benefits. I would now like to invite Nick and Colin to begin their presentation.
Great, thanks, Allison. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending this morning. So Colin and I have set up a presentation just around protecting your business while supporting a remote workforce. I'm going to start off with some more of the business insurance side, right? So talking about your property and some things to think about, and then Colin's going to go into kind of the more employee focused piece of it all. So without further ado, I'll get kind of started on this. There we go. Okay, so firstly, we kind of have to talk about property insurance. So these are the things that we're thinking about in terms of the office space that we're no longer occupying, or the space we're no longer occupying as the workforce is at home, right? So the office is likely closed, unoccupied, or vacant. We want to make sure that we're doing regular building checks, but we also need to ensure that we've informed our insurance provider because there's likely conditions in the policy about this. Most insurance companies these days have extended this or are being very lax on this. So that's all good, but you still want to make sure that there are regular building checks as well as keeping logs of those visits. Water needs. So what this is talking about more so is about, does the water need to be on in the building, right? Especially this weekend as we're seeing the temperatures dip again. We want to make sure that if the water is on, that the heat's on, and if you can turn the water off, that would be highly recommended, especially if you're not going there on a daily basis. Small water leaks can become big problems. And then security concerns. This is around making sure that if you don't have an alarm, have an alarm. If you don't have someone checking on the building, in terms of security, maybe it's a time to have them in the short term just to make sure that the building's protected. Close the windows, close the drapes or curtains just to make sure people can't see in. Next is the equipment and the files at the employees' homes, right? So a lot of businesses have kind of gone two ways. Either they were already set up for remote work, so people already owned this property and it was kind of going everywhere, or they bought new stuff, or they've taken the stuff that they had at the office to their home. So that's kind of what we did at Cowan. So I have all my stuff from work now at my home. So we want to make sure that we're tracking the equipment, right? You want to make sure that anything that left the premise you know about, and that you know what employees have and don't have, so that there's no miscommunications or accusations coming back in, right? We never want to have that happen or those kind of conversations, but it's important to know. We also want to make sure that on your current insurance policy that it does allow for things to leave the premise. Again, most insurance companies are being lax on this, but it's important to know before something happens than the fact that it's after. If an employee sets up at home and they have $5,000 or $6,000 and something happens at that employee's home, fire, water, and it gets damaged, it's better that it comes off of your insurance policy than trying to deal with someone's homeowner's policy. And then secondly, kind of on that same vein, did you purchase anything new to accommodate working from home? Did you buy a new printer? Did you buy new computers? What did you do? Make sure that those things are accounted for on the policy if they haven't been already. Okay, so protecting your property. So here are just a few kind of recommendations, more so outside of the scope of insurance, but kind of risk management practices. So water shut off, I kind of touched on this. And if you do shut off your water, ensure the sprinklers are still working. Sometimes those two things are connected, so we definitely do not want to be turning off the water to the sprinkler. Heating, if you do want to save on your heating bill, make sure that it stays between 5 or 15 degrees Celsius, right? You can't really go below 5 degrees Celsius as there's potential that pipes could burst. Again, there's different regulations depending on, or different recommendations depending on the building, but again, that's kind of general rule to save a few dollars on the heating costs. Regular visits to the premise. Again, same kind of thing I talked about on the front page there. Keeping logs, so if you are going on a daily basis or whatever the insurance company wants you to do, make sure you keep logs of what it was like at that time, so that if something happens, let's say you're checking every Monday, you go into the office to make sure nothing's missing. Let's say you go Monday and then you don't go again until next Monday, and now there's water or something happened. You want to kind of show that when you went the previous Monday, there was no water, there was no evidence, you went into all these rooms, so that then they know what happened between last Monday and this Monday. They can kind of narrow it down. Yeah. Outdoor cleanliness, so garbage and landscaping. We want to make sure that the property doesn't look vacant. So making sure that the property's clean, that the grass is cut and all that, right? Landscapers are back working now, so that should be no problem. But if you don't have a landscaper and it's your responsibility, make sure that it's kind of clean and tidy. Access to parking lot. This is just a good risk management practice. If you can limit access to your parking lot, i.e. concrete structure or something like that, to make it harder to get into the property, it limits the chance of theft or people just kind of hanging out there. Again, that's just sound risk management practice. And then any extra security measures, if you want to install video cameras so you can see it, maybe additional locks, lighting, floodlights, or motion sensor lights, and then maybe the thoughts of hiring a security company. And then next, with employees now working from home, we have an increased cyber risk for most businesses. So some businesses already had a cyber insurance policy. If you don't have a cyber insurance policy, this might be a good time. Kind of general rule is that $1 million costs about $1,000 in premium for the year. So it is relatively affordable. And it is really, as we hear about dates for office employees to go back, some are thinking in the next couple months, some are thinking not until there's a vaccine, right? Or some are also thinking about permanently going from home, working from home, going to a remote workforce. So that's also a good idea to get cyber insurance if you don't have it already. So firstly, it protects both physical and virtual information. And it's broken down into two key coverages, coverage insuring agreement. So there's the first party, so you as the business is the first party. Business interruption, so if there's issues with your network and you can't access your network, they can insure the business interruption associated. Cyber extortion, this is the idea that your entire system is encrypted with a password, and you need to buy the password to be able to unencrypt it. So it's also called ransomware, but that's the general idea there. Notification costs, so under PIPEDA, there's a requirement that if you do have a breach of personal identifiable information, that you are required to notify the parties affected, so you can ensure that. And then social engineering, this is definitely a hot topic, and I think this is alone is the reason to buy cyber insurance, because it happens so frequently. Social engineering is the idea of trickery, and you pay someone money. So something as easy as someone impersonates a regular vendor of yours, and they say, oh, hey, I haven't actually have a new bank account, can you update it and pay this account instead? Lo and behold, that person's impersonating them, and that's no longer a fact. Or someone impersonates a CFO or someone like that, saying, oh, I missed this invoice, can you please pay it ASAP? And they're impersonating someone within the company. So social engineering, right, that idea that someone gets tricked into sending money to someone who is not entitled to it. And then the other piece of it is the third party liability. So this is any liability to the people affected by a cyber breach or anything. So there's the first agreement, which is cyber or security and privacy liability, which again is you have a breach and personal identifiable information is breached. And the other one is multimedia and intellectual property liability. So this is more about your online presence, but generally speaking, that's the other piece of cyber. So cyber risk and COVID-19. So what we've seen, and these are kind of some things to think about, right? So now we have a remote workforce, we have an increased eavesdropping exposure. So you have people that are now in a new space, right? When you have an office, everyone who is there works for the same company, they all have similar interests. When you're in a public space or you're at home, there's potential eavesdropping of private and confidential information. So information security protocols, again, this kind of goes back to eavesdropping a bit, but people now have information at their homes. Some people have files and all that stuff. So traditionally in an office, you would have some sort of procedure for shredding and all that to keep any confidential information confidential. Now that people are working from home, have you thought about those additional security protocols and how to kind of balance them? So we have increased exposure to endpoints. What this means is before all the computers were inside the office, they were on the office network. It was secure because you have sound IT practices. Now everyone's working from home. How can you ensure that the Wi-Fi or the internet that your employees are on are properly protected? So again, that's something to think about, making sure that they update their passwords regularly. They're not doing any illegal downloads, anything that can get them onto their private network. Again, we've seen some increased phishing activities, given the fact that people are working from home and there's less going on. There's definitely increased phishing attacks, right? People impersonating the government or doing whatever, potentially putting your employees and your network at risk. Another thing to think about is that if you continue to be PCI compliant, so if you accept credit cards or you are PCI compliant, are you still adhering to those practices, right? As you move home or as things change, we want to make sure that we're always staying compliant with any relevant things. And then lastly, new technology. Are we properly vetting the new technology, right? We hear different things about different types of apps and things, and are people taking advantage of them, right? So did you add a new piece of technology? Teams or Slack are the examples, to better kind of communicate with your team, and did you properly vet them, right? We've seen some security concerns over Zoom specifically, and I know a lot of companies are relying on Zoom to kind of adhere to the remote workforce, right? So is that the best choice, or is there a better choice out there? Okay, so things to consider. These are more just questions to think about. So I'll run through them really quick and kind of give a little bit of commentary to them. This is really all about just kind of managing expectations. And kind of making sure that everyone's on the same page, right? Because when everyone's on the same page, then it really limits your risk, both mainly from a cyber perspective, but it also makes sure that that everyone knows what's going on. So as you change from office to work, have you set guidelines for working hours? Is the expectation still to work 9 to 5 or whatever it is? And then second to that, is there a plan to monitor when employees are online? So are you making sure they're online? Are you making sure they're working? Things like that. And then now technology, company property is at home with these employees. Maybe they didn't have a laptop and they had desktop computers. Do you have policies regarding the appropriate use of company property, right? To make sure that they're using company computers only for company work, they're not using it for their personal, or is that allowed, right? That's the question there. Is there an expectation on productivity? Are you expecting people to be more or less productive, right? A lot of people have their kids at home. Is it fair to have the same expectations? They have to take care of their kids, those types of things, right? Homework and all those things. Has it been communicated? So access to all the technology you need, video conferencing, communication platforms. This kind of goes back to that idea of is the technology you have appropriate? Do you need something new? Have you considered alternate options? And then again, as we transition toward a kind of a back to work process, is there an internal communication strategy? An internal communication strategy and a plan to implement it. So how have you accurately kind of talked to your employees? Do you have an idea of kind of open lines of communication, so to kind of limit some of the uncertainty that we're experiencing in these times? And then lastly, have you looked at pivoting your operation? So we are seeing the economy is slowly reopening now. There's been a couple good announcements over the last week, and I think it kind of continues in that direction. But has your company changed at all, right? Have you added e-commerce, curbside pickup, delivery? So have you leaned up your operations, right? So have you reduced some additional expenditures, laid off employees, terminated employees, things like that? Have you considered cash flow, short, mid, long-term cash flow needs, right? There's definitely a lot of programs out there to help in the short and medium term. Is there a long-term plan for you? And then there's potential for new industries, new ideas, right? New distribution channels. So this all really should be communicated to, any changes to the operation should be communicated to your insurance provider, but it's also something to think about. I talked about it, increased risk, cyber risk as workforce is at home. That's important. And then there is a physical risk to your vacant unit, right? So the fact that you're not going into the office every day, that's important to consider, kind of that physical risk, and if maybe the office isn't needed anymore, right? As we're seeing the success of work from home. And then I'm going to pass it off to Colin to kind of talk about the health and wellness planning of the
Great.
employees.
Thanks very much, Nick. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Nick said, we'll be looking at some health and wellness planning, that things to think about. So it's all about now resetting priorities and motivations. So just like companies are resetting or adjusting their plans, employee health and wellness goals are shifting too. Employees may be in survival mode. They're just really trying to get through the day, facing extreme isolation. If you have someone who lives alone and really doesn't have the other family members there to socialize with outside of normal hours, it can be extremely challenging for them. Their health and wellness goals may have changed significantly with gyms and pools and other places being closed, and dealing with other factors like potentially being a teacher or worrying about family and friends, and if they have family members in long-term care homes that they really can't get out and see and visit like they would like to. A great quote from Sir Richard Branson once said, he said, "Take care of your employees and they'll take care of your business." We all know that employees are an important part of making our businesses go. Without the employees, really, most of us wouldn't be able to get through the day. We couldn't do it all on our own. So they are a very important thing, and we want to make sure we're taking care of them. We want to look at taking a mindful approach. So really trying to focus on the present rather than the past or the future. So during times of uncertainty and shifting priorities, what can you control? You can really control your actions, the messaging that you're giving to your employees, and leading by examples. So focusing on these areas can build a culture of wellness and boost employee job satisfaction by an average of 23%. So potentially you want to look at doing a wellness program, and really the anatomy or the steps that you would take would be senior leadership support. So the senior leaders need to be active participants. They need to walk the talk. Establish a wellness team of volunteers that include a cross-section of employees and departments. Collect and assess data, so identify key organizational health risks. So potentially if you have a group benefit program, a great way to do this is looking at things like your drug utilization reports. So you can really look for things like diabetes and high blood pressure medications. If these are things that you're seeing as high uptake on in your benefit plan, then you can really gear those plans towards that. You want to create a plan, so create a mission and vision statement for the program. Basically, the main thing here is always communicate, communicate, communicate. People need to hear things 7 times and in 3 different formats to really for it to sink in. So you're looking at posters, e-blast, company intranet, and implement, measure, and refine. So you don't want to just put something in and find that it doesn't work. You really want to look at maybe doing a survey 6 months after it gets set up to get employee feedback and adjust if needed. And look at the 20-80 rule. So focus on vital activities that take less time but achieve the most value. So even if that's something like a 15-minute walking club that people can go do at lunchtime, it's a short period of time, but it's a great way to get some social aspect. Again, this is when things ease up and we start getting back to work and the social distancing measures go away. But it's a great way just to get some physical activity on a daily basis. Communication approach. So this is a big thing that's changed for a lot of people now with remote workforces. So the delivery. So how do you get that message out to a remote workforce? So are you using Skype, Microsoft Teams, or emails? Emails are great, but people really still like that personal touch. And even if it's a short video call with a manager or a coworker, it's giving them some social interaction there. Tones have definitely changed, and the content. So really what we want to try and do is focus on the positives of what's going on. So no matter how small, everybody loves a win. So if you can focus on something like that, that's a positive that's come into the organization, or something that's come up through all this and an organizational change, people really appreciate it. What hasn't changed? Trusted sources. People want to hear from their managers and senior leaders. They want to make sure that they're not feeling alone. Need for frequent, consistent communication. So again, people don't want to feel like they're on an island, that they're at home now, they're in their silo, that they're basically being forgot about. And you want to remember diversity. Everyone's family and lifestyles are a little different, so we want to try and focus on that as well too. So content ideas for a diverse workforce. So self-monitoring and isolation, we want to focus on tips for working remotely. You want to look at potentially establishing a dedicated workspace in your home so that when you go there, you feel like you're actually at work. You're not sitting at your table one day and here the other day, because it just doesn't give you that same sense of routine. Make a to-do list to stay focused. So really you want to jot down the main things you need to do for the day. And then as you cross them off, it's just a great way to feel like you're really accomplishing something. Create a process for collaboration. Again, you want to stay in touch with your coworkers and your leaders. So whether that's Skype calls again or things, again, it's all about those personal touches, and that'll really help with the isolation that people may be feeling. So managing stress and anxiety is a big thing for a lot of people. So potentially, maybe as part of a benefit program, you have an employee assistance program. So that'll give people an outlet of something that they can call in and really talk to counselors or other people to work through and talk through the things that they're feeling right now. Managing media overload. So of course, right now, if you have the news channels on all day long, it's just a constant barrage of what's going on. So really try and look at allotting a set amount of time throughout the day. And maybe it's something as simple as turning the notifications off on your cell phone so that you're not getting those constant pings all day long of things that are going on. And of course, for those who have children, it's a very important thing to figure out how to speak to children about COVID-19. So really, you want to look at, finding out what they know already, ask them questions, and then offer comfort and honesty, and really work through it. They want to know that you're there to support them, just as much as we like to have them around for, the enjoyment they bring to us. Taking care of your finances and financial stress is a big thing right now for a lot of people. If you're looking at the media and you see the markets and they're bouncing around up and down and all over the place, and really, I think most of us know it's a short term, or we hope that it's a short term thing. So talk to your financial planner, get some reassurances for them to see, what you can be doing to, better manage those ebbs and flows of everything going on there as well too. So of course, as we talked about the employees working from home, but potentially people leaders are working from home as well too, and they need just as much support as the employees do. So in times of crisis, people leaders may face heightened levels of anxiety themselves. They have workload changes because they're trying to figure out how to stay in constant contact with these people that are now working from home that they're used to seeing on a daily basis. And there potentially is a lot of survivor guilt. So, they may be working, but they may have had to lay off or let go some other staff because of the downturn that a lot of businesses have faced in the recent times. So they need to find ways to do that or figure out how they can help themselves out. So how can we support the supporters? So there's things, again, employee assistance programs are not just for employees. So if you're a people leader, if you call into your employee assistance program, if you have one, they can offer a lot of support. They can do a lot of leadership training and advice that really help you through there. Senior leadership can play a role in lightening the load. Again, the workflows are juggling so much in every organization right now. It's all about balancing in the best way that we can. But if you have a small organization, so what if the senior leader and the people leaders are one and the same? They have a lot of challenges in that they're really trying to run the business, but help their employees, and it's really a tough balancing act that they're going through right now, and it's a little unprecedented for them too. So specific wellness challenges and solutions that these organizations can look at, or that the employees may be having challenges with, is, so one thing you can find is some people, they may have some musculoskeletal health issues. So that can be things, again, working from home. If they're working on computers, it could be carpal tunnel, tendonitis, neck tension, back pains. So really the challenge is they've lost those preventative services. So they can't go out and see a massage therapist or a chiropractor. Their exercise facilities or gyms or pools and classes are closed. And there's the social aspect of preventative behaviors. People like going to the gym because that becomes their social network. So again, they've lost that access to in-person primary care. Now, there's still some, you know, chiropractors potentially that are doing emergency appointments, so you may be able to get in there, but there's definitely some solutions in looking at ergonomic assessments. So try and go online and find some tips on the best way to set up your home office to make sure your monitor is, you know, the top of your monitor is at your eye height, that it's one arm length away from you and stuff like that. There's just certain things like that you can look at. There's a lot of virtual paramedical services now, so you can look at doing virtual physiotherapy. And a lot of these virtual services are covered under a group benefit program. I would always recommend that you check with your provider first, but definitely you find that you may still have access to that. Virtual healthcare is a new thing. Maybe you can't get out and see your primary doctor right now, but a lot of doctors are starting to set up virtual things, and there's a lot of virtual apps that you can look at, and we'll talk about a little bit later on as well too. Exercise streaming services, you know, there's a lot of things that you can potentially look at. If you love yoga, look for a yoga on YouTube video and basically do a class at lunchtime just to help through and really try and keep that physical health up. But alternatively, on the other side of that is there's the people's mental health, which will be our next slide. Thank you. So the next slide of mental health is, again, the challenges are that isolation and loneliness. People are at home, they can't get out as much. There's survivor guilt. Again, same thing with the leaders is they may still be working, but their coworkers and friends were laid off due to the economic downturn right now. They have a lot of anxiety. There's the performance, the uncertainty of what's going to come in the future. And they have a lot of illness related fears. People are worried to potentially go out to, they're afraid that, you know, just going out and buying groceries may cause them to get sick. They're having a lot of burnout. They're just pulled in so many directions right now. And there's those emotional, mental, and behavioral reactions. So again, some solutions. Again, I go back to it again, the employee assistance programs, if that's something that's included in your benefit program, provides free counseling, and they can do it online, they can do it through apps, they can look on the provider's website for different articles just for information that they can read through at their own time. There's virtual cognitive behavior therapy, again, virtual paramedical services. Again, physical health and mental health are tied very closely. So if your physical health isn't where it needs to be, it's going to definitely start to affect your mental health. So get on those. If you can do the paramedical services to make your body better, it's just going to help make your mind better as well too. Government initiatives. There's lots of things that the government has really tried to do to help support people during COVID-19. Two of the initiatives they've done for the mental health side of things is there's a Mind Your Mind program or a Bounce Back Ontario, and these are free, you know, websites that you can go to and look at doing online articles and things like that to help yourself out, and peer support. So hopefully, you know, you maybe if you're at home, you know, you're still going to have your family with you, your friends. Again, you can reach out to them in different medias and set up even just group chats as well too with your friends, not just your coworkers, because again, sometimes you don't want to think about work all day long, so sometimes you need a break and to focus on yourself with your friends who know you best, and just to share a laugh if you can. So now if we look at some suggested resources, again, we've talked about a few things as we've gone along the way, but definitely Cowan Insurance Group, for us personally, we have a COVID-19 resource page. So if you go to our website, cowangroup.ca, you'll see a banner on there and you can click on it. It'll give you different information about how COVID-19 can affect your benefits, your commercial, all those different types of insurance. So Thrive is another. It's a self-assessment app that was developed in partnership with Health Canada, and if you search for it, it's the Canada COVID-19 app is the one that you can do for that. The Mental Health Commission of Canada is a trusted source for information. Stronger Minds is a virtual cognitive behavioral therapy treatment, and it's in partnership with Beacon, and I think it's mindbeacon.com. Again, lots of websites that you can look at. Wellness Together Canada is a mental health and substance abuse support program that was a government service in coordination with health partners like Homewood Health. Homewood is a huge EAP provider out of Guelph, Ontario, very well renowned organization. So again, the governments work closely with them. There's the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, so telemedicine and virtual care. So as I said, virtual care is a new thing that's come up. Again, if you can't go out to see a family doctor, or maybe you don't have a family doctor, and really you just need something as simple as renewing a prescription, you can look at these virtual practitioners. So again, your family doctor may have adopted those, that they can now do those visits online instead of you coming in. But there's other ones that are potentially free if you have provincial health coverage. There's tiahealth.com is one. But again, you can also, if you have a benefit program, you can check with your benefit provider, as some insurance companies are providing virtual medicine at no charge, potentially during the pandemic. Again, this is based on a different provider. Some do, some don't. So again, you can check with your benefit consultant and see if that's something that is offered under your program. But the government virtual care guidelines, of course, are determined at a provincial level. So provincial sites would give you the most up to date. I'm sure most of us on the call today are from Ontario, but definitely if we have an organization that is across Canada, it'll differ by province. So we would definitely recommend that you're looking at the right provincial site to just determine what's available as well too.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Colin. So I think that was some really great information. So here's Colin and mine's contact information. So if you do have any more questions or something more specific, you can definitely reach out to us. And there's also a link to our COVID-19 page that Colin touched about. So the presentation will live there. I think as well, the Chamber will be sending out a copy, but if you have any questions, please kind of type them in the chat box like Allison said off the top, and then, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nick and Colin. So maybe we'll start with our first question, which is to both of you, because you both kind of talked about different things. What would you say are the key questions and or issues that you're hearing from your clients?
Yeah, I'll start with my part of it, Colin, and then if you want to kind of touch on it after.
Sure.
So right now, kind of the big questions that we're seeing kind of as it relates to this is all about how to take care of the property. So I have a lot of clients too that they've kind of moved to the remote workforce. So it's kind of the same thing, right? So it's like, how are you protecting your property? They're asking me how often that they need to check on it. So it depends on the carrier, depends on the business, right? So you definitely have to talk on that sense. But if they have a strong remote workforce now, I'm definitely pushing for a cyber policy if they don't have one. So it's definitely a conversation, and they're relatively affordable for the time being.
Great, thanks, Nick. So of course, for me on the group benefit side, a lot of the questions that I'm getting from the organizations I deal with is really, again, because a lot of organizations have moved remotely, but a lot of organizations that don't really have the ability to do that, is it's really come around, what happens to the benefit program for staff that need to be laid off. So we've had a lot of questions about layoff provisions and how long we can extend benefit coverage for. So again, that's a carrier specific on what they do. You can find that benefit coverage potentially can be covered up to 3 to 4 months for people. Hopefully by that time things have normalized. That again, we've seen that in the coming weeks things are starting to open up, so hopefully again we'll start getting back a little more normal, that people will start coming back to work. Another thing that's happening right now is a lot of people have asked about potentially you're seeing a lot of premium reductions. So some carriers are offering premium relief on benefit programs because they know that a lot of practitioners are closed. So like dentists, for example, dentists you can go in for emergency services only, but for that regular kind of checkups and cleanings that we're going for, they're not really having access for. So some of the benefit carriers are giving premium discounts because they know that the experience that the people can't use it as well too. So that's a lot of stuff that we're dealing with on the benefits side as well. And again, those premium discounts vary by carrier. So again, talk to your consultant to see how, if and how they apply to you as well.
Okay, great, thanks. Colin, you talked about ergonomics, which I imagine is probably a pretty hot topic because for many people who are working remotely, they've had to create a makeshift workstation that's probably not the same as what they would be working at their office. So I believe you mentioned kind of going online and looking for some ergonomic assessment tools. Is there anything specifically that you can suggest or any tips around ergonomics?
Yeah, so like I said, there's a few things. I said it's really it's trying to do the setup, right? It's, the main things are, like I said, I guess for a lot of people that are on computers all day, it's that neck stress and neck pain that they get. So a lot of it is like I said, keeping your monitor, that the top of your monitor is really even with your eye so that you're looking down. So you're keeping that proper posture, really trying to find the best chair that you can. I see a lot of people, a lot of people have moved to those sit stand desks. So potentially if you have the ability to, again, I'm a big proponent of keeping that same space. I come to the same spot every day. But if you have the ability to move up and down, great. But again, like I said, that's where, and keeping your monitor an arm length away to really prevent eye strain. So even when they say if you're on the monitors all day long, they say you should take a break, really, like I think it's every 20 minutes. It's like a 20-20-20 rule. So take a break every 20 minutes and try and focus on something that's 20 feet away from you for 20 seconds, just to give your eyes a break and really help kind of focus in. But really, again, it's challenging, right? Because we all have different setups and things, but it's like I said, that's where those are some main things, definitely. But then again, try and just see what works best for you. And I mean, Cowan was great because we were, as Nick said, we were allowed to bring our equipment home. We were allowed to bring our chairs that are really for fit for us to bring them home. So again, that's where you can check on the commercial side of your policy, as Nick said, to see to let your providers know if people are taking those types of things home as well too.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I was gonna make, Colin. I think it's important that you kind of support the employees, especially if, because I've heard some different things from different companies, right, in terms of their plan to go back to work, right? So I've heard things as early as next month, right? But then I've also heard some like September, October. They're not gonna wait until then to kind of figure it out. So I think if it's right now, we kind of have a lot of people have makeshift kind of work from homes. So if your plan as your business is to kind of remain long term from home, maybe it is allowing for expenses or things like that to kind of push it away from the employee to make sure that their long term health and everything is accounted for as well.
Okay, great, thanks. Colin, can you do you have any tips in terms of best ways to communicate the EAP information to employees? So, one way is sending it out in an email, but as you mentioned in your presentation, often it takes a couple of different ways to communicate that kind of information. And because the COVID situation may be sparking some mental health challenges, are there different ways that businesses can be sharing that EAP information with their staff?
Yeah, so that, again, that's a great challenge and a great point, because a lot of times with the EAPs is they'll provide you posters for the workplace, for the lunchroom and stuff. But again, if people are working from home, they don't really have access to those types of things. So I think a lot of times it's going to be the same is, contacting the staff, even as a refresher, sending out the EAP brochure, because typically what happens is people get these things when they first started an organization. It comes potentially with their drug card and maybe a copy of their benefit booklet. A lot of times booklets now are electronic, so they get it, but they don't need it at the time, and it goes in a drawer and they never see it again. So it's another great way of even a senior leader touching out to their staff and say, hey, I know you're working from home, you may have a lot of stuff going on right now and being pulled in a lot of directions. Just want to remind you that we have an EAP program. Here's the brochure that I've attached for you. Look through it. They potentially give you and you can give them the brochure, you can give them the website and say, and even say, oh, I was on here and I looked at this great article on here. Some of the EAP providers that you potentially have will send out potentially monthly emails with things, and you can even, again, send that on as a touch point. You send the brochure, and then you send out this email. Oh, the EAP provider sent out this great email about certain things, and for the most part, a lot of those emails that those providers are sending out are specific to COVID-19 right now. It's all the things of working from home and dealing with with the children and stuff. So it's from a touch points part, it's, I said, for those types of things, it's hard to get that many out there, but definitely it's finding ways and just as reminders, I think, work the best right now and stuff too. Because again, it's a great way to touch base with your staff and then also provide them information they may be looking for.
Okay, great, thanks. One more question that we have now, but I'll remind people that are on the call that if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box. So as we hear about some businesses starting to reopen, and it will be a slow process, but there are businesses that are starting to think about reopening. And so from both of your perspectives, from the different areas of insurance that you're working in, do you have any tips or any things that businesses should be thinking about as they plan their reopening or their return to work?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that a lot of businesses are going to, the challenge that we're going to have with a staggered workforce is, again, the diversity of your workforce. So you're still going to find that as staff start coming back, because it's a staggered, a lot of things that they still rely on aren't there. So it's really the childcare, and because the schools, we're not sure when they're going to open. So if you're bringing, staff back that have small children at home, they potentially now there's even more of a challenge in that they're trying to get out, but they have no one to looking after their kids. So hopefully, I know they're talking a lot about doing double ups and saying that, well, right now we've had you self-isolated with one family. Hopefully, if you do a double up, you might be able to get more support. But that's going to be, again, one of the big challenges of bringing staff back is trying to help them even manage their priorities and getting back to work.
Yeah, I think like from my perspective and my kind of side, we've been talking a lot about this. Like so some of some of the businesses that I have, they haven't really been a full shutdown. They've been like a partial shutdown, right? So it's about, for me, the biggest thing I kind of talk about with my clients, and then as we kind of see it go forward, right? The government's been really good at providing the health and safety guidelines. I think for me, it's first and foremost, it's about employee safety and making sure that the business can kind of continue, right? So on the business side, right, you want to see that the business continues to run in terms of business insurance, right? So our focus is the business and not the employees, right? So we want to make sure that that the business runs. So is it split shifts? Is it those types of conversations? Health and safety protocols? What changes need to be made to the space that you're in to make it to comply with social distancing, right? So in instance of like an office space, right? Most people's offices, a lot of them are going open concept, right? So that means that there's no walls between people, right? Do you need to add cubicles back? Do we need to put higher cubicle walls? Those are the kind of conversations, along with plexiglass and things that we've seen from the groceries and the pharmacies in terms of protecting their retail employees. The same thing should be happening in other businesses as well, right? And any kind of modified kind of distribution, right? So retail stores, I believe this weekend they're going to be able to start opening with curbside, or if it's next week, right? So it's about, in that instance, making sure that everyone, staff, customers, everyone understands the process, right? We hear these stories about expectations and customer experience going down because of it, but we've also seen that some companies are doing a really good job with the customer experience, right? I know it's a big company, but I saw Canadian Tire had one of its best first quarters in a while, considering the online and that they've seen their online channel really skyrocket. So given the circumstances, they were able to adapt well, right? So if you're going to go to some sort of modified distribution, making sure that you keep your customer experience, especially for small business, that customer experience and the repeat customers are the most important thing. So I think it's all of those kind of risk management, right? So making sure that employees are safe, but also the customers are safe. That was really long-winded to get there, but yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And those are all of our questions for today. So Nick and Colin, I would like to thank you very much for sharing your time and expertise with us today as we help support the business community through this difficult time. To our attendees, you will receive a follow-up email that will have a link to this webinar recording, as well as a link to the slides for your reference. And I would encourage you to visit our website for a list of all the upcoming webinars that we have planned, as well as past webinars that we have hosted. And again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and thanks again to Nick and Colin.
Thank you.